So I guess we can start. Uh, I guess people will keep on joining.
Yeah, okay. Uh,
Okay.
let's start with an introduction.
Yes, I'll start. So good
Okay.
evening, everyone. Today we have with us Ankit Gupta, who is working at Morgan Stanley. He is a 2021 pass out and also final year mentor at Unicode. And yes, it's lovely to have you over here.
Yes, thanks for the
Yes.
introduction, Vatsal. Hi, everyone. It's great to be back here. uh, I think Vatsal covered most of the good stuff. I'm a software engineer 3 at Morgan Stanley right now and got placed right out of DJ. I interned here for 1 summer after my third year, and that converted into a full-time offer. And that's where I've been ever since. Um, yeah, I think directly jump into questions.
Like, yes, you can basically talk about how you went through college or what you did in college, the the
Yeah,
Unicode part.
uh, man, this is going to be a trip down memory lane for me. uh, right, so I think it joined in a pretty much the standard way. Uh, Gave my CT and got a decent score, so got placed at DJ. Uh, so I always knew that I wanted to do computer science. Like I had Java back in school as like an optional subject. Uh, so I fiddled around a little bit with programming. I was just familiar with like if statements, for loops, that sort of stuff. So I thought like, okay, this makes sense. This is interesting stuff. So I want to do this as a career. And yeah, so started at DJ in 2017. Uh, my first bit of like actually doing something was working on a project with a couple of my junior college friends after joining DJ like in the first year. So we were working on like a game development thing, building a game. And the fun part was that most of that team was located abroad. And because of that, I ended up learning Git pretty well because everything that I had to like we had to do was in like different time zones, and that was the most correct way to move things around and ensure that our code doesn't conflict with each other, which if anyone has tried Unity, it's just like a never ending stream of merge conflicts. So Git kind of was very important. And what else? In second year, I found out about all of these communities within the comms department, and I was like, okay, पढ़ाई तो हम कर ही लेंगे. Let's explore these as well. It's practically part of everything. So yeah, I joined as a second year mentee at Unicode. I was, I think, one of the first full stack mentees back then. So I was doing primarily backend with Django, and for front end, I think we had React. Yeah, we had React, I think, back then.
Yeah.
But uh, yeah, so I was on that attendance app project where before Microsoft Teams came along, we wanted some way to digitize the DJ Sangvi attendance, which used to just be pieces of paper with our names written on it, and we had to sign our names. So we automated that into being an app. So yeah, there was an app, a website, and then I was a mentor, and then final year mentor, and so on. So that's been my Unicode journey.
Yes,
Yeah.
great. Yes, this should be a Q&A type session. So yes, whoever has questions can raise their hands and I'll unmute you. Or as well, you can post your question in the chat box and we can ask for the same. Uh, so like I had some questions for myself, like joining the corporate life next year. So I just wanted to ask, like, what is corporate life for you after college, straight into corporate life? How did you manage, and what was your experience?
Okay. So Morgan has this interesting thing where for the first 4 months they just have training, and I think JP Morgan also does this similar sort of thing. Uh, so what that really helped me out with was that it felt like an extension of college, and it built like a really strong foundation of it built a really strong network as well, and like it built a really strong foundation of a lot of internal technologies within Morgan that are like kind of only used within Morgan. Uh, so I was able to like hit the ground running when I joined my team. Uh, so I didn't really face an issue where you join the team and you don't know what's going on, or uh, they give you some task to do and you have no idea how to go about it, because the training program prepared me for it. But for people who will be joining a company that doesn't have something like this, that's going to be problem number one, right? So uh, one thing to keep in mind at that point is that ask as many questions as you can, but don't ask like questions that are easily Googleable, right? Like don't ask them what is the git command to do this. That should be a
Uh,
Google. But you want to understand, okay, why do we use pull requests instead of just using branches? That could be a good question. Or why is the system designed this way? Why are we using this technology instead of something else? Or I don't know how this particular piece of the functional thing works, like specific to a project. For example, like I work in a money movement project, so uh, we move money around for high net worth clients. So an example there would be that, okay, I don't know the different types of payments that we support and why there are so many, right? Like that's a very business or your project specific question that might not get answered that well online, but like your team would have a lot more insight into it. So try and ensure that the questions you're asking are of that category where they are the best people to provide you that information.
oh yes, got it. So like we had one question. Can you
Mhm.
tell something about what you do as a SPA in Morgan Stanley?
Right. So, I mean, we all know what a software engineer is, right? We write code, we plan product, we plan features that need to go into the product. The way our team is structured, we have a bunch of people called product owners who are basically business people who decide that, okay, the client should be able to do this, right? Like, for example, one feature that I've worked on is allowing a client to make multiple transactions at the same time. So, just being able to say, I want to send $5 to Vatsal, $5 to Devansh, and $10 to Varun. I can just, input it in a single UI instead of visiting that UI 3 times. So the business people will kind of decide that, okay, this is something that the clients want and this should get built. And then it's our responsibility along with BAs, which are business analysts, who will design that, okay, to make this happen, these are the changes that need to happen on the UI. This is the tech that we'll require. These are the database changes that we'll require. I might need to restructure the way data is flowing through the system. Like instead of a single JSON, I might need to send a list of JSONs to support multiple payments, right? So designing how all of that would work is step one. And then we write the code, then we write the tests, and then we deploy to prod. If something breaks in prod, then we debug that. That's like the basics.
Okay,
Oh, I
yes.
didn't mention the tech stack. Uh, so my tech stack here is Java, Spring Boot, microservices. I also work on the UI, which is Angular with NGRX. And we have this one product from IBM called ODM, which allows you to have business rules that can be enforced via code. So basically, it's a rule engine. You guys can Google it up what that is, but it allows us to like have a bunch of rules that our Java code can then run.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So another question that we had was, can you tell something about what should a person learn if they want to go into quants or work as a quants developer? If you have anything to say
Okay,
about this.
that's a nice question. I do not know that much about fonts, to be honest. So I'd like to pass on that. But uh, I'd suggest you reach out to someone who's actually done it and take advice from them. I wouldn't know that much about it, so the wrong person to answer that.
Like, if you know any quants person, if you know, so you can just share the name so we can ask them.
Uh, Not really, actually. I don't think anyone from my DJ batch really went into fonts, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. Another one was, can you tell something about your interview prep for Morgan Stanley? So, like, when you will have this question, so like, I'll reframe it. How did you start? Uh, yeah, like Morgan Stanley, did it come to college or did you apply off campus? And then how
Right.
did
So
you prepare for
Morgan,
it?
yeah. So Morgan did come to DJ back in 2019 for the first time. They showed up and said that they want to take a bunch of interns and full-time people. Uh, so I applied for the internship and was able to crack it. And then after the 2-month internship, I got a pre-placement offer based on another set of interviews. As for what sort of stuff is asked and how to prepare for it. So for my internship interview, the focus was mostly on stuff like DSA, low level design, like just class diagrams or database diagrams. They were asking a little bit of operating systems, multi-threading, a little bit of networking, that, HTTP protocol and stuff like that. What is REST, all of those sort of things. Um, and they asked me like a SQL query. So it's like usually the theory stuff that they ask would be stuff that you freshly learned at college. Uh, so like if you kind of given the college exams, you would already kind of be prepared for those. DSA is something that you'll need to practice. That just writing a theory paper and versus having code that actually runs is a big difference. So DSA you'll need to practice, but the rest, like just to revise what you studied for the exam, then that's good.
Yes, yes, got it. I guess that answers your question, Monil. So another question was, is it more beneficial to have knowledge about more stacks or have deep knowledge about one stack? Like what is more important to fetch the job?
Okay, that's a good question. I like to uh, call this the sniper versus shotgun question. That you could either be like a sniper and just specialize that I want to do just this, and I think that's on you, right? There's no real right answer to this because some people have this innate thing that I really want to do this specific thing, right? Like sitting at Morgan for 3 years, I had all the opportunity to learn about the financial aspects, but I haven't bothered because that doesn't interest me. So if you're like me and you're like, okay, Meko, I just want to do this one thing, right? So then it doesn't make sense to just go around learning additional stuff that you don't care about. Okay, you're not gonna get that good at it because you are not interested in it. But for like most average people, learning a bunch of things also helps you decide what you like. For example, I've tried game development, I've tried app development, I've tried machine learning, I've tried plain old software engineering. And like I've realized what parts I like and what parts I don't like. If you don't try it out, then you'll never know. So definitely give things a shot, but like don't feel pressured that oh I have to be good at everything, otherwise the company is gonna reject me. That's not true.
Okay, I think that will answer today's question. Um, the tech stacks you have mentioned, like Java, Spring Boot, Angular, were you well versed with it before joining, or you learned it while working?
Uh, so my majority of experience back in DJ was with Python and Java. Java was I didn't use Java for any projects because like personal projects in Java seemed like a lot more daunting. Uh, I'd done like the college mini projects and stuff, but like not really. I'd never used Spring Boot, for example. But I had done a lot of web development with Django, and a lot of knowledge is transferable. So like, uh, just like for learning for loops, right? You wouldn't bother, oh, how many languages can I write a for loop in? It doesn't matter, right? Same way in how many different languages can I build a website doesn't matter. But as long as you know how to build REST endpoints, as long as you know how to build a lot of those basics and understand how they work, that's usually good enough. As for more complicated things like Kafka and stuff, I did not know them uh, while interviewing for Morgan, and I did learn them on the job itself. But that is okay as long as you are good with all the stuff that they ask in the interviews, right? If they're not asking Kafka in the interviews, it's not really required to get your foot in. So you don't need to worry about those things at this point. Right now, your focus would have to be on getting your foot in.
Yeah, got it. That will answer, I guess, Gauri's question. So they'll ask how to handle a situation where interviewer is not familiar with your tech stack and move forward in the interview, bringing something else up. There's like many rules come like which ask for .NET, Angular, many of the things which we are not familiar with.
Right. So if so what I have seen is that a lot of companies don't really expect you to be very, very good with such frameworks already as students, but they do expect your basics to be very clear. Um, but that will also depend company to company and like interview to interviewer. Uh, Ideally, tech stack, like even I'm not sure because I didn't really go through too much of a placement interviewing situation back in DJ. But from what I heard, they don't really ask too much about specific tech stacks. They're gonna rather ask you DSA, they're gonna ask you operating systems, networks, that sort of stuff. They might ask you that, okay, you wanna build a website like this, design it out for me. How would you do it? What would the database look like? Such things. So if you're able to do it in any language, they're usually fine. But do stick to some of the core languages like Python, Java, etc. If you're trying to write it in like a very esoteric language, they might not understand what you're trying to express. So that could go into your like it'll be bad for you, right?
Um, uh, so yes, the another question what we had was for internships, up to what extent should the quality of project be? Does it has to be really good or a basic project showcasing majority concepts?
Uh, so you're talking about the project that the company is going to make you build during the internship.
So this would be, I guess, like internships at small companies or at startups that have like smaller projects. Or do you need to have large scale projects working in bigger teams?
I guess he is asking for about personal projects, like on the resume.
Oh, yes. I read the question wrong.
Personal projects.
For the
Okay.
resume, for grabbing
Um,
internships.
so ideally, there's two things to think about when building a project, right? Number one is what did you learn out of it? If I am a Django developer and I'm building 5 different websites with Django, one is an Instagram clone, one is a Twitter clone, it's not adding any value, right? So that is one thing that you need to see that, okay, if I've already built something of this type, then what is the advantage of building one more thing that's just like that, right? And if you go to hackathons and stuff, you'll anyways end up having a couple of projects that you and your friends have built together during the hackathon. So that's like one way to add up more projects into your resume in a language or in a framework that you're already comfortable with. On top of that, when you're going, ideally a little bit of diversity does help because then there's a higher chance that the interviewer would be familiar with the language or the framework that you're using. As for the quality of the project, uh, it's usually more of a conversation piece in the interview, right? Then not really, you're not looking to impress them. You're looking to like uh, answer a bunch of questions, and they want to see, okay, how does this person think? How does this person plan? How does this person make decisions? That sort of a thing. So I think focus on like trying different things and having a bunch of different types of projects on your resume. If yeah, yeah, for personal projects, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, got it. The previous question where I had asked about the tech stack familiarity with the interviewer. So he asks like, I work on Flutter, and twice in a resume-based interview, the interviewer was not familiar with it. Like, what can a person do in such situations?
Uh, s- so I'm a little confused by this question. Like the interviewer is asking you what exactly that you
It's
like.
basically a resume-based interview, and he is a Flutter developer, but the interviewer is not that familiar with Flutter. Yes, that's what it meant. Or if you can ask him yourself,
Got it.
you
So
can unmute.
see, Flutter at the end of the day allows you to build apps, right? And if you are being interviewed about that app, you really don't need to go into like the technical details about how it's working. You rather need to talk on an abstract level that, okay, the app takes in this information from the user, it makes these REST calls, it connects to this database, it queries data in this way, etc., right? Like you need to talk about the functionality of the app. I don't think the tech itself is that relevant. For example, most of my projects were in Django, but my interviewer was a Java developer, and it was fine. That wasn't really an issue for them.
Okay, the answer got answered, question got answered, or do you have any more doubts?
Like I had
I
one
want to
question.
ask
Like
that. Yeah, you can continue.
no, I just wanted to ask, like, is there any specific things that companies look in when they go through the resumes? Like, what should be the ideal structure to prepare a resume or stuff like that?
Like,
Uh,
in industry level, at your level?
so ideally, when so there's two things that usually happen. For a company, for a usually a big company like Morgan Stanley, you are not getting hired for a specific role because hiring is happening in, let's say, Sem 7 of your college, right? You will be joining after you graduate. That's like a year's gap. So nobody is going to have like a specific opening in a team that's going to wait for a year for a person to join. Very often it's going to be that they're just hiring a pool, and then based on like forecasted that, okay, we'll need roughly 100 people next year, so let's send out offers to 100 students across the country, right? That's kind of going to be the mentality. So uh, because of that, I would say, like, what was the main question here? uh, what was the question? Could someone repeat the
Okay, so
question? How much?
like I was asking that is there anything particular that we must target to have on our resume
Right.
or what should be that?
Got it. Yeah. So since they're not hiring specifically for a role, they really won't be looking that, oh, we need specifically someone who knows Spring Boot, and they won't really be really grilling you on Spring Boot or whatever. They'd rather see, okay, we need a smart guy who can solve problems, right? The rest of the stuff he'll pick up on the job. That's okay. But is he familiar with Java? Is he familiar with inheritance? If the company is like primarily using those tech stacks, they'll expect that, okay, does he understand how REST calls and whatnot happen? So a project that already is using some of those things would help, right? And in addition to that, some achievements help, some uh, I mean, a lot of companies care about GPA, so good GPA would help. Internships are always useful because then they also have a way to verify that, okay, this person is not just good at building things by themselves, but they can also work in like a corporate environment and build things out there and understand how things are working within that company and add value over there. So internships are also a huge help.
Got it.
Oh, and if a company is looking for a specific role, then you would see that, okay, they might grill you about very specific frameworks. For example, when I'm going out to take interviews, I tend to ask a lot about Spring Boot and whatnot because I'm looking for immediate joiners, right? We're not hiring students directly into our team. We're hiring people who already are working in a different company and they're taking a job switch. So they'll be joining my team in a month or two. So I need them to already know those things. But nobody really expects a college student to have built enterprise grade products. Yeah. Just have projects and internships on your resume. I guess someone had another question.
Yeah, so I was asking about like, is it fine to have a specific tech stack based project, or it is better to have a diverse like tech stack based project on the resume?
Right. I would go for diverse. At least if you can't diversify the tech stack, try diversifying what you're building. Like building multiple social media apps in the same tech stack adds zero value, right? You've built one already, you don't need one. Uh, but like if you're going into uh, a different field altogether. Like you're still using the same tech stack, but you're exploring blockchain as well, or you're not using it as a front for a machine learning project or whatever. Like you're adding in other things. So then it's okay to use the tech stack that you already had, or you were already familiar with. But yeah, a variety always helps because then you can talk about a whole variety of different things and you'd be compatible with a lot more different types of roles.
Okay, I was also having another question. Like, is at the third in the third year, like it is more beneficial to focus on DSA or look for internship if one is not having an internship?
Uh, Even most internships would require DSA for their interviews, I'd assume, unless you're talking about like completely startup level internships. So uh, definitely try focusing on both, but you'll need your DSA closer to when the interviews are, whereas the internship you'll have to have it already, right? So I'd say if you're like right now, y'all would be in SEM 5, right? So right now, maybe try hard for internships, try and get land something for next summer. And then once you have it, then you can pour all your energy into DSA.
Good evening, Ankit. Are there any chances that you can bring Morgan Stanley again at DJ for hiring?
I wish, man, I wish. But no, man, I don't have that sort of a pull in the company to really convince them. Uh, I don't think they've got like an issue with DJ specifically. Hiring has been slow because the US economy has not been doing well. I think I don't know how up to date you guys are with situations in the US, but there's been a lot of layoffs in the US in the past couple of years, and in general, jobs have been bad in US based companies. So because of that, there's like a general slowdown in hiring.
That only I wanted to ask, like, why did Morgan Stanley abruptly stop coming to DJ? Like, the
I
time
mean,
when we
I
joined,
don't
it
really
was
have
like,
the meeting notes from whoever decided that, but I'd say like in general, their hiring has gone down. So that's probably the reason.
uh, so One person has asked like, what GPA do companies like Morgan Stanley expect?
Okay.
Like,
So when I applied for Morgan, I had an 8.9. I graduated with like a 9.2, 9.3 something. Uh, so that was enough for me. Usually GPA isn't like a ranking criteria, it's just a threshold criteria. So they'll just say, oh, I don't want to interview 200 kids. So I'll just take like the top 50-ish. And then all of those top 50 are going to be treated roughly the same, right? But then if the top 50 come out to be roughly, let's say, 9 GPA, so then they'll say, oh, we have a threshold for 9 GPA. Whoever has less than 9 GPA, we won't even interview. Because they feel like that's a big enough pool. I want to take 5 kids, I'll interview 50. That's more than enough. I should be able to find enough people that way.
yes. So I also wanted was you said before, you take interviews of people who already know about that thing or who are
Mhm.
looking to switch their companies.
Yeah.
So what's the first thing you look in their resume like?
I see how compatible their current job tech stack is, because when a fresher is joining, I think the company knows that they're going to have to invest a little bit of time and effort into that person, but then that person can become like a really strong team member. Whereas somebody who's coming from outside, they expect that the other company has already done that investment. So that person is already polished. Uh, so since that person is already polished, I don't want him polished in a different tech stack, right? If my team is doing Spring Boot, I don't want a .NET developer. So in that case, I will see specifically that, okay, out of all the tech stack that I use, how many of them are they already familiar?
Okay, yes, got it. So one question is, do companies expect us to consistently get good GPA every sem, or they just focus on the final CGPA at the time of hiring?
Uh, so from what I remember from placement season, it's a cutoff on the total CGPA, and they prefer you to not have any active KTs. Uh, that's what I remember.
Okay, yep. So one more question was how corporate life is. Is it very much hectic? Like, does it require more time after dealing working hours? You get time for yourself too.
Okay, that's a lovely question. Uh, so corporate life would depend company to company for sure. And I think you can read up about the companies that you guys are applying online on like sites like Glassdoor and levels.fyi and whatnot. I think even LeetCode has like a discussion page where you can read up about those companies. There'll be like Reddit posts about it. So do a little bit of Googling and figure out what the corporate environment of that company is, what the culture is like. And culture can also change and it will also vary from team to team, but those things are a little more difficult to evaluate. So get a idea of what your company's culture is like online by googling, at least, so you know what you're getting yourself into. For example, some companies are considered to be a more relaxed place, whereas some other companies are notorious for overworking employees. So you need to know what to expect and what you're getting yourself into. What it is for me, I can share. So in my case, we have like a tight deadline next year. So sometimes work pressure does get a little high, but overall, uh, it does tend to stick within the same set of hours. And we have the advantage that since it's a global company, we have team members across the globe, right? So I have a squad of people working on the same project in New York as well. So if something breaks in production at the middle of the night, I don't have to wake up. They are already awake then. Um, that might not be the case for a lot of smaller teams and a smaller project in other companies, especially big tech companies like Amazon and whatnot. They also have something called on call, where you're expected that, okay, this is your project, and you know these are the 4 or 5 people working on this project. So there'll be like a rotation that, okay, for 1 week, I will be responsible. Next week, Vatsal will be responsible. Anything breaks, you might have to log in at a weird time and fix it. But other than that, it's about managing your own time, right? You commit to how much work you'll get done in a. Wait, have you guys studied software engineering? Is that still a subject?
Yes, yes.
So you guys are
I
familiar
guess
with like.
the third year people will have it in next sem.
Okay.
We fourth year students have already
Okay, so
had
I'll
that
give like
subject.
an idea. So there are these things. There's this thing called Agile or Scrum. I don't know if you guys have heard these words, but if your team follows that, so the idea is that for a certain time window, for us it's 2 weeks. It could be like a week. It could be 2 weeks, a month, roughly those sort of time ranges. You guys as a team will commit that, okay, I'm going to get this done by the end of this time, right? So I'll say that, okay, I'm gonna get task A, B, and C done in these 2 weeks. And then managing your time and getting them done is on you. So you might get done a little earlier than expected. You might have to pull a little bit extra to get it done. That's on you and your time management.
Okay. Yes. I wanted to ask like the on-call thing. I've read about it. It's at many places, but I did not exactly understand. Like, is it on live projects or what's on-call actually? Like,
So let's take an example. We've all used Amazon, right?
yes.
Now, what do you think? Amazon being such a massive company, for a long time, like right now they have AWS and all sorts of complicated things. But earlier it was just like one marketplace. But even then they had like thousands of engineers, right? And the reason for that was that every tiny bit of the app was divided into different teams. So one team would be like looking into payments, another team would be looking into frauds happening related to those payments. So they'd get data from the payments team and run analytics on it, right? So every project has a different level of criticality. If payments is down in Amazon, somebody needs to get it up ASAP because that faults all business by Amazon. That's hitting revenue, right? And
Yes.
revenue is where your salaries are coming from. So everybody needs to panic if Amazon sales is like payments is not working. But on the other hand, if the analytics is down for an hour, it's okay. It's not that critical. Customers are still doing their stuff. There'll be a backlog of data to process that can get processed once you fix it. So it's not that critical. So on call is for like usually outages and they have like different severities based on how much impact it is to the user. If entire AWS is down, then it's a massive fire and everybody is going around looking for what's gone wrong. But if something tiny thing is gone wrong, okay, cool. They'll figure it out. They'll take their time to fix it. Uh, Maybe they'll even wait till like the business hours show up and then bother कि ठीक है रात को नहीं उठाएंगे तो मैं सुबह आके कर लेना तो fix. So that's going to depend on the severity, and because this can get really bad, right? So there are dedicated people who are assigned key. This week it will be me, next week it will be Vatsal, so on, so that the pressure is kind of divided out and you don't end up having all the pressure on one person all the time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Another question that we had was, what made you decide that you wanted to sit for placement and not opt for masters? Like,
Well, I love this question. So DJ back in my time, feel like a really old person when I say this, but DJ back in my time was like a very masters focused college, and the friend group I had and like the mentality I had, I was definitely a master's kid. I gave my GRE. I was definitely like full on planning. I was going to write research papers, do all of that stuff to go abroad. But then COVID rolled around and I had done my Morgan Stanley internship. So my internship was May 2020. COVID was in March 2020. So I was like shit scared in March that, oh, they'll not let me come for the internship and what will happen, because it was like an in-person internship.
Uh,
So we don't know what's going on in the world at that point. How will the company decide what to do? But luckily, they did let us have the internship, and the internship went smoothly. They did it completely remotely, which was quite big for Morgan because they didn't have a concept of remote work before that. Uh, and yeah, I really like the environment. I like the people. So when I got the offer, it seemed like the safe option that till the pandemic doesn't subside, let's maybe consider this. And then I've seen what a lifestyle a lot of my friends have had after that going abroad, and the US economy doesn't seem to be getting better. Maybe with Trump getting elected now, things might change, but that's all hopes and there's nothing solid. So it didn't seem worthwhile to me personally to leave a job and go there at this point. So yeah, that's how I ended up doing a job there.
okay. Also, I wanted to ask, like, do you plan on now doing masters, or you consider doing
No.
in the tech, or getting into another department or some another stuff like
So I think
finances or
taking a
something like that?
job switch is not complicated, right? You can prep a little bit of DSA in your free time and take a job switch. So like I feel like a technical master's does not add that much value unless you want to go into like a very niche field. For example, I've done like a bachelor's in computer engineering from DJ. So that's like a plain old generic degree, right? I don't have like a minor or a specialty. I really can't say that I'm a machine learning expert or a data science expert or an NLP expert or any of that. So if I feel like I want to go into like the hardcore stuff, like I want to work in OpenAI working on ChatGPT 4 or whatever, then I might have to do a master's, but I don't have those aspirations. I'm very happy doing plain old software. Uh, I'm more interested in like DevOps and cloud and microservices and system architecture sort of stuff, which doesn't necessitate that much of a master's direction. Uh, so it doesn't make sense for me personally. So I'm planning to stick around in India and continue.
Yeah. Like also currently it's always in the scenario like you need basically two things, like along with an engineering degree, you need to do something else in future as well, right? So it's currently going on in the market, like doing an MBA or getting a master's or getting some another type of certifications. So you plan on continuing in the tech part only, or getting into another like an MBA or a finance?
So at the moment, I have zero interest in like marketing and sales and finance and all of those fields. I think I'm a tech baby and I'm still very enamored by the tech industry. Uh, so I'd like to stick to tech, but maybe a startup direction or something might be considered, but definitely not like an MBA at the moment.
Okay, yes. So one question we had was, do you think masters is really important even if we are working in a good company already?
I think I covered a lot of the answer for this already, that masters helps you. So a master's abroad helps you with two things. One is specialization. You can specialize in all those fancy fields like machine learning, NLP, whatever that interests you. So if you have found that correct answer that, oh, I love NLP, I want to do nothing else except NLP, then it's a good idea. And second thing is it's a great entry ticket to the US because you get an OPT. So at least for the 2 years you're doing your masters and the 3 years that OPT gives you, you can happily live in the US as long as you manage to bag a job after your masters. So um, from like those are the two main reasons to do a masters. Uh, Other than that, if you want to stick to a tech job, a master's, a generic master like a master's in computer engineering won't add that much value. Uh, some companies definitely, if you want to go up the ladder and enter into more managerial roles, an MBA can help, which I think Atsal you were hinting at, right? But I think that too it's a little early for me in my career. Like I think that glass ceiling starts to hit way later in the career. So yeah, it's definitely not a problem for me so far. So that's not a consideration right
Okay. Yes. Another question that we had was like, what are your basic go-to things to prepare in placements? Like the majority things that if you have your placements coming up, suppose, so what would you plan on doing? The
now.
majority things.
So okay, so we're just talking about the prep part. We already have the resume sorted out, right? So
Yes.
projects, internships, all of that on the resume. After that, main thing usually boils down to design and DSA. Those tend to be things that you can't crack without practice. It's very rare that you'll crack it without practice. Um, so definitely put a lot of effort into that and be familiar with a lot of the concepts that you studied at college, especially related to like networking, operating systems, multi-threading. Multi-threading is usually quite important because a lot of people get it wrong very easily. Uh, so study up a little bit about that, practice a little bit of like SQL statements and all of those. And Google up common interview questions, see if you're able to answer those. So that's like the technical prep. And one common thing is that engineers don't tend to be that good at speaking skills. I mean, I used to have a lot of problem there personally, and I think a lot of us would relate with that. That we're not the best at soft skills, so we might seem a little less confident, or we might not uh, push too hard if we feel like the interviewer saying something wrong, and we might not want to correct them. So try and get over that by having a couple of mock interviews with colleagues, with seniors, whoever's willing to take it. So that builds your confidence and you also get in that zone that, okay, I know how to do this.
Okay. Yeah. Another question was like seeing the current scenario, like there are many people who will be continuously switching jobs, like after a year of working in one company, they'll switch jobs again and
Yeah.
again. So like what made you think like Morgan Stanley was you would like to continue in Morgan Stanley for 3 years, like you
Oh,
have
I
worked for
I
3 years,
don't
and
want to retire here, man. That there's nothing like that. Um, so there's definitely like an element where you look at all your other things in life as well. Uh, I was lucky enough that even in a really bad scenario like COVID, I was able to land a job that is in my city, 15 minutes away from my family home. Right. It pays me decently well, and my team is amazing. The work I'm getting to do, the learnings I'm having in my team are all good. So there aren't any real complaints. Uh, quite happy here. But yeah, it is very common to switch around nowadays, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. So uh, yeah, if you feel like you want to, definitely do that. Now, you don't need to think that, oh, what will my manager think or what will HR think or whatever. If you want to do it, do it.
yes. Okay, so how is the AIML field, AIML as a field of target? Like, how much do you think will AIML like it of more significance in coming years? Like in Morgan Stanley as well, AIML would have been implemented to a certain extent, right? Like,
Right. So the thing with AI ML is that it's rapidly changing. Just a couple of years ago, before ChatGPT and all were a thing, uh, a lot of it was like very focused on like building your own AI models, training your own models. Now I feel like a lot of conversation is how do we self-host instance of ChatGPT within our company and like give it access to company data and then just be able to ask it things. So like the idea of building things from scratch, uh, that kind of got replaced to a certain extent for certain use cases, of course, right? Like where you have very, very structured data, it's still better to train your own stuff. But so where you have like massive amounts of disorganized documentation, and you just want AI to like go through that and give you like a summary. Okay, this is how you can do things. Um, then that kind of helps. So there's definitely a lot of use cases, and it's important, especially as students, to stay up to date that, okay, this is the latest thing going on, because industry is always going to lag behind. I think back when I was in college, we used to think that industries are doing all the cutting edge stuff, and us students in an Indian college don't know that much cool stuff. But it's usually the other way around. Because as college students, we have the ability to explore whatever we want. We don't need to worry about, is this project actually scalable? Is this project, would it be able to survive for years, or would I start having security issues and whatnot? Yeah, does this library get security updates? I don't care about it. It's cool. I tried using it. I have a GitHub project. So as students, you all have that freedom to explore. Go explore that. Okay.
One thing I wanted to ask, like, could you share any experience that you know on how to go about with off-campus placements?
Uh, of campus. So I didn't really need to, but you need to see firstly if the company is offering like specific roles or like a generic role. For example, Morgan had that training program, right? So in that case, even a referral won't really make much of a difference. But if you're applying for a specific role in a specific team, which you're close to graduating, and you want to join in there directly, so in that case, a referral would add a lot of value, especially if you can uh, figure out someone who's from the same department, and that person can kind of really talk to the hiring manager and say, oh, do consider this kid. So at least that gets you an interview, rather than your resume going to an HR who doesn't themselves know that much tech stuff to evaluate your resume. uh, so referrals help if you're going for a targeted role. um, what else? I think the I've seen a lot of people do very, very catchy stuff online, like LinkedIn and stuff. Like this one kid who wanted uh, to get into cred, and he made like a full advertisement and whatnot that I want to join the marketing team at cred, and they literally built an ad from scratch that was like super high quality. Or this one guy who wanted to get into Tesla or something, and he literally tailored an entire website that had all of his information to look like the Tesla website or something like that. So people also put in like a ridiculous amount of effort to get noticed. That someone senior in the company will notice you, and then that's an easy way in. But that's obviously a lot more difficult to pull off. Uh, I've also heard apparently people who do like really, really well at competitive coding, they tend to get recruiters reaching out to them, samne se, if like you win a big contest or something like that. But I don't know much about that. I've never done something like that. Uh, but that's also something. But yeah, just keep applying, man. That's the best thing. Just apply to a million places. कोई ना कोई तो जवाब देगा.
Yes, I guess that were the questions. If any more questions we have, you can ask. Yes, uh, based on the off-campus thing, like yes, we might approach you for a referral as well.
I
During that
mean,
time,
feel free,
we'll-
but Morgan has that training program, as I mentioned, so it doesn't add much value because
Okay,
it's
okay.
that campus hiring team only that looks into hiring at the fresher level. But if someone's looking for a job switch eventually in a year or two, you all can reach out to me.
Yeah, sure. One day down the line, I'll contact you.
Yes.
Yes, I guess those were the questions regarding placements or masters or preparation, corporate life. Yes, once again, thank you so much, Ankit. We were happy to have you here, and thank you for answering all our doubts and questions that we had. And yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I think this was a lot of fun. I hope I was useful.
Yes, yes, definitely. Like many of our questions were answered. Like even my personal three, four questions were answered, which I was looking for.
Great. I'm glad. Thanks for organizing this, guys. And I guess keep continuing this series. I think it's helpful for everyone. So, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so
Thank
we'll
you.
conclude. I
Okay. Thanks,
yes.
everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye. जाने के बाद कैमरा चालू कर रहे थे हो गया सेशन खत्म गाइस जा सकते हो सिर्फ चालू रख के जाएगा भाई निकाल देगा तो फिर
नील बाहर जाएगा
हाँ उसके घर पे गेस्ट आए हैं। अच्छा रहा 1 घंटा चला ये भी।
पिछली बार कितने लोग थे रिकॉर्डिंग बंद कर
चलो
दिया
रिकॉर्डिंग बंद कर देता हूँ